Yo, what's up everybody? It's Drewberry and back with another custom card video. This time we're going to be talking about the winners from the deck challenge. And let me tell you, number one has probably taken the spot for the best custom card I have ever seen. The effort, the detail, the creativity, it's through the roof. So definitely stay tuned for the number one winner this week. But we also have some other amazing submissions, and I got my own, of course, mixed in. But the next week's challenge is going to be the keyword cost. I thought it'd be interesting because we just had Miss Marvel release, and I got so many questions about what does unique cost mean, and I thought, why not just mix it into a custom card challenge and see what people can do with it. So, you know, cost, right? The cost of a card essentially is what it means. If you want examples, just go into your Marvel Snap collection, search for cost, and a bunch of cards are going to pop up, right? Miss Marvel being a prime example. The theme is going to be Marvel. We're going to stick with Marvel characters, but I'm thinking once a month we're going to change that up, and it's going to be something different than Marvel. So that means like 3 out of 4 challenges will be Marvel, and 1 will be, off meta, so to speak. Okay, and then if you want to submit a card, join the Berryverse Discord, link in the description below. You can use that link right there to create your own custom card, and then you can post one submission in the weekly challenge channel. If you want to post something new, just go back and delete your old one. Do not have multiple submissions in there, and try to keep the conversations in the custom card chat. The weekly challenge channel is just for submissions only. All right, and then the season pass winner is going to be Guilty Flygon. Somebody I've actually featured a lot. You got the random winner for the season pass. That's going to be the season pass for December. So Guilty Flygon, I will hit you up when that rolls over and you get that season pass. Congratulations. Very cool card, by the way, and the art is amazing. I thought this one was really neat. You can move this anywhere as you're on your opponent's side. That's a tricky technical thing, you know, if you're just looking at like how do you actually code that into the game. But it's neat. It's disruptive. Very cool. 4/6. Cool character. Well done on winning that, Guilty Flygon. But let's get into this week's winners. All right, let's start it off with my card, and that's going to be Avalanche, a 3/8 on reveal. Replace your deck with rocks. So here's what I was thinking when it came to this card. And the only reason I really made it is because Gladiator's coming out next week, and he's a 3/7, data mined as a 3/8, so we got nerfed. And there's a lot of talks about that card not being very good, a lot of mechanical interactions, blah, blah, blah. But when we look at the stat line, 3/7 is great, and 3/8 would have been insane. We do not have that yet in Marvel Snap. So I was like, what would constitute as a, an okay, not too broken, really negative ability 3/8? What could work with that stat line? And I came up with this guy just to see what you guys think, because anytime we have a crazy statted card, you can be looking at cards like Zero and Cosmos. Any way to mitigate that ability, get rid of it, anything like that. If it's ongoing, you're looking at Sauron, that sort of thing, right? So where's the threshold? Where is it okay? Is it never okay? Is 3/8 just never okay? That's what I was thinking. I think turning your entire deck into rocks is devastating. But of course, you can just play this card on turn 6 and then it's fine. Then you just have, all those cards that you didn't draw turn into rocks. It doesn't really matter. You can play this behind a Cosmo. You can use a 0 on it, and then you just get 3/8 stat line. You can use Sarah on turn 5, so that turn 6 is a 2/8. And then you don't really care about the ability, right? Because you don't care about your deck turning into rocks. So I feel like this could be really strong, actually. Despite, turning your entire deck into rocks is devastating, you're still allowing your opponent to fill your deck with rocks, so Darkhawk is still a good strategy. And then also every time you draw something, it's just trash. You don't really care about it. So I think it could be pretty fun. Maybe even run it in a Patriot list somehow, and then you draw those rocks. If you're fine with it because they're 1/2s, probably not, but it's kind of funny to think about. Anyways, that's really all I wanted to get out with this card, is like what works with a 3/8 stat line. Is this ability not severe enough? Does it have to be even worse? Maybe it has to be an ability that doesn't have an ongoing or on reveal, so Cosmo and Sauron don't work, right? Then only 0 is your option. Something like that. Something to think about. Anyways, let's get to this week's winners. Number 5, Graham Richardson's MAR-VELL. All right, so MAR-VELL here is another Marvel character. I don't know the lore behind this one very much, but I've seen people use it. Very cool character. So 3/0 on reveal, discard all cards in your deck that didn't start there and gain +2 power for each. I bet Graham's going to be kind of shocked that this one ended up in, because he was saying that he was a little bit late to the submission, but I think it's a really neat idea. I like the concept of getting rid of all the cards in your deck that didn't start there. So we're looking at like Rockslide, Korg, putting those rocks in there, of course, Subterranea, these sorts of things. Even playing into Vibranium Mines, for instance, so that all that Vibranium gets, tossed out the bin and it's discarded. I thought that was an interesting twist. Usually discard, you have to have it in your hand for it to discard, but I think this could be a very simple mechanical twist where you end up kind of essentially drawing the cards, then they're discarded, they put in the discard pile. I think it could work. And it's neat because, you can work with Morbius, you can work with Thanos, getting rid of all those Infinity Stones. They did not start in your deck. It's a start of game mechanic, but as we know with like Quinjet, previously discounting them and stuff like this, they didn't start in your deck. They will get discarded. That's a great combination. Then you have a very buffed up MAR-VELL. But the problem being with that, if you choose to do it in a Thanos list, is you're not ever going to activate your Thanos, and you're not going to have those stones, which can have really good abilities. The stones are the best part of Thanos. So you're kind of sacrificing those just to power up this card. So there's a bit interesting little balance there. And then of course, if you have the stones, then you have to dig for MAR-VELL. You're not going to draw it right away. If you have to dig too much, you're not going to have much to discard. So there's actually not a whole lot that works with this card, but I think it's pretty balanced. Even look at like Mr. Negative, but then I don't know how you can rely on having cards in your deck that didn't start there. There's actually not much that you can do as the player to put cards in your deck that didn't start there. It's usually up to your opponent or the locations. So that's why I think the balance here is pretty spot on, pretty cool flavor. I like, discard having something a little bit different, right? Like there's like ways to utilize having a big deck, or, I don't know, or destroy, taking advantage of those cards that didn't start there. Cause like you draw them, the rocks, you destroy them, it's fine. Discard, you don't ever really want to draw a rock. It's like, that's going to suck. You discard it, you probably want to discard something else. So I thought this was really cool. Thank you for the submission, Graham. Let's get to number 4. Number 4, Velvoxoraptor the Beyonder. Oh, that's a tricky name to pronounce, but there you go. So the Beyonder is a 4/2 on reveal. Switch your deck with one of your other decks, or another one of your decks, right? So you have, I don't even know how many deck slots we have now. It's like 18, 20, something like that. So you have the deck that you queued with, and then he's going to swap it with one of those other ones. Now, you're going to see the final submission plays similarly to this, kind of has a similar effect, but it's interesting, kind of reaching out into the beyond, past the current game, into another deck. Now there's RNG because you don't know exactly what deck you're going to pull. So then you're going to just start drawing and finding out, oh, I pulled that deck. But then there's also a very weird layer here where in order to optimize this card, what you end up doing is deleting all your other deck lists. So you just have one deck list that you want to pull. That's essentially what it comes down to, which can be very not fun, I think, because a lot of people just like to have a lot of deck lists, try them out. You don't want to constantly be building them, copying, pasting the code, anything like that. So I would worry about that aspect of this card. But if I look beyond the fun aspect, if there was a way that wouldn't necessarily happen, maybe like the Beyonder can choose like the leftmost deck to the one you queued with, or the rightmost deck that you queued with, so that it's kind of guaranteed that you're going to hit that deck anyways, because that's the strategy. That's what people are going to do regardless. I think this would be really fun. I think it'd be pretty cool, because what you could do is you can play Beyonder on 4, and then maybe that deck to the right or the left, or whatever deck it ends up pulling, you only had 5 drops in. So you're guaranteed to get a 5 drop on your next draw, and then on turn 6, you would draw another 5 drop, and that's probably fine. Or 5s and 6, so that or America Chavez. So you have all 5s and America Chavez, so then you got your 5-6 play. That's pretty neat. Gives a little bit of consistency. And then, there's just other ways you could build it up with a crazy combination of cards. Maybe we do just 6s, really high power cards. We throw Beyonder into the Lockjaw cycle. His on reveal activates, switches the deck. He goes back into the deck, and then we pull out like the Infinite or Giganto or something high power. You can already build your deck to do so, but it's cool to think of like these crazy combinations. You can look at the Jubilee pulling something like one of those high power cards. And then I was even thinking, what about M'Baku, right? We switch the deck. That would depend on how many cards are actually in the deck at the time. Does it replace it 1 for 1, or are you putting all 12 cards into your deck now? That'd be like a Darkhawk buff if your opponent's playing that list. But I think it would be kind of neat if you guaranteed that you got M'Baku into your deck. You only have a couple draws left anyways because you played the Beyonder late, and then M'Baku flies at the end. We could use some M'Baku love. I'd never see that card, man. It would be pretty neat to see that card in action. But anyways, Pretty neat idea. Love the flavor of just reaching into the beyond the game aspect with the Beyonder. Very cool character. A lot of people want to see this in the game. Thank you for the submission. Number 3, Pinto Hui's Binary. All right, this is a crazy one too. So a 3/4 ongoing, both players' max energy is equal to the number of cards in their deck. Weh. That's just wild. So probably the most broken combination here is Thanos, because you put a bunch of stones in your deck. You already have a huge advantage energy-wise over your opponent. You play Binary on 3. I don't even know what the total energy is, but I'm sure it's like skyrocket to like 7, 8 for turn 4. And then you're always going to have just a bunch afterwards. Insane, probably broken. That would be the only combination I would look to tweak. But then there's other fun things like using Maximus to get your opponent to draw so they have less energy moving forward. You could even look at a list with like Yondu, Mantis, these sorts of things to actually mill your opponent's deck so that they have no energy for those late game turns. I think that'd be pretty funny, but also super toxic. But then, you know, there's random generation. There's ways that cards could just be like thrown into their deck that you got to watch out for. There'd be like this really weird situation where if you play Binary on 3 and Lamentis 1 showed up, then no cards are in either player's deck. They have no energy and the game is just over. That'd be like whack. So again, this is another one of those cards that kind of walks the line of being a little bit toxic, a little bit not too fun. But I really like the creativity and the ideas here because, you know, that toying with max energy, even doing a reciprocal effect, so your opponent could do the same thing right back to you, I think is pretty neat. But probably a 3/4 stat line, we'd have to drop that down a bit. We'd have to go like 3/2 or something along those lines. But very cool. I saw a few people do something similar to this, but I thought this was the most interesting because it is reciprocal. It's going both ways. Anyways, thank you for the submission. We got number 2 next. Number 2, Randall Boggs, Black Ant. All right, so a 1/7 costs 1 more for each card in your deck. That was really cool. So the 1 energy is kind of just temporary, or like the base cost of the card for one of those situations where like it can be destroyed by Killmonger, right? Because that's the base cost. It's not that the cost that is showing in your hand isn't actually going to be what hits the field, I imagine, anyways, unless this is like one of those ongoing. Well, no, it would have to have ongoing. So I feel like that's how it works, similar to like Miles Morales and stuff like that. So it hits the field. This can actually get destroyed by Killmonger, Elektra. So that's a huge counter. But it's pretty neat because you're trying to essentially mill yourself. You're trying to like rip through your deck as quickly as possible so that Black Ant is only going to cost 1. And then it's a 1/7. That's pretty good. If it's a 2/7, that's not too bad. If it's a 3/7, pretty good. 4/7, we're probably getting into the point that we don't necessarily want to play this card. And I'm trying to think of like in a typical game, I think by turn 6, you have 3 cards left in your deck, provided no shenanigans, right? No additional abilities firing off to give you cards, take cards, anything like that. You got 3 left in the deck. So that'd be a 4/7. You would have to find some synergy. You'd have to be playing some cards to tear through that deck, like some Adam Warlock draw, some Crystal, anything like this, just to get enough cards out and hope your opponent maybe helps you out as well. But Darkhawk like ruins this, right? Puts a couple, or Rockslide Korok strategy, you know what I'm saying? Puts a couple of rocks into your deck, and that's just going to be terrible. So this is like super balanced, I think. It'd be very difficult to make it a 1/7, and even as a 1/7, like it's counterable, right, with Killmonger and such. So I think this is a very balanced card, very neat idea. I love cards that are just simple, but can change their cost depending on the strategy of the deck that you have brought to the table. Kind of cards like Stature and Miles Morales, I find those are very interesting additions to bolster certain archetypes. And I think Black Ant makes almost its own, like trying to draw as quickly as possible. That is a cool mechanic. You look at Strong Guy, he's trying to get rid of cards in your hand. How about we have a Strong Guy or some kind of card that gets buffed based on, you know, the less amount of cards that are in your deck, how many you can rip through? That'd be cool, huh? How about we get one of those with Black Ant? That seems cool. By the way, the variants are just fire. That middle one, so sick. And the party one at the bottom with Taskmaster, that's hilarious. Love it. This was a great submission. Thank you, Randall. But now it is time to get to number 1. Number 1 is JackPack Spot. Look at this card. A 3/2 after you play a card here, draw a card from another one of your decks containing Spot. As you're going to see as this cycles through, he's got some synergies, some combinations that you can play. An example of how this is going to look in the game, in the animation, the artwork, the creativity. It's insane. It's insane what you did here, Jack. It's so good. Look at this. Look at this. You got Spot like right here, and then he's like using his little Spot portal to send a card rather, from another deck into your hand. It's so cool. It's so cool. It's so well done. You got the Berryverse Discord shout out right there with the keyword and the theme and oh my gosh, man. This card is, you went to the next level. You know, I never expect this level of effort in the custom cards, but it's so cool when you guys do it. It's unbelievable. It blows my mind. So thank you so much for just putting in the work here. I definitely don't feel like you have to do this every single time. My goodness. But very cool. Unleash the power of the multiverse, draw cards from your other decks. So let's talk about the card itself, right? Possibly broken. I think a lot of people, I shared this on Twitter and people were going nuts over it. And a lot of folks said, very cool card, but this is totally broken, could never be in the game. Maybe I'm inclined to agree for a few reasons, but there are a few specifications, things that I gotta say that JackPack clarified, just so you guys know. All right, so Jack was clarifying that Spot has a hidden rule that he will not try to draw copies of himself from other decks, mainly for thematic purposes, but also slightly improving the overall quality of his draws. So, of course, you're going to be pulling from another Spot deck in your deck lists. So it's essentially a 1 in 11. It's not going to be Spot on repeat, okay? Cards that Spot draws will trigger the collector's ability, so that's why I got them as a synergy there, as the cards are entering your hand from somewhere that isn't your deck pile. Makes sense. Cards that Spot draws will also receive the -1 cost reduction from Quinjet for the same reason as Collector, which is pretty wild as well. Of course, not going below that minimum 1 threshold, but you are getting reductions. So you play your Quinjet on 1, you play your Collector on 2, you play your Spot on 3, and then you throw in a Wasp or whatever you got to do at that location to pull cards from another deck list into your hand. Now, very quick clarification. I think a few people got this mixed up, is you're not getting this card for free. You could almost look at it like Lockjaw, right? You play a Wasp at Lockjaw's location, it swaps in for something in your deck, right? Something that you never drew or might not have ever drawn. And then Infonaut pops out and that's 20 power. So Spot is doing the same thing, but you're playing the Wasp at the Spot location. It has to stay there. So you are kind of locking yourself in with a few of those cards. And then you're drawing from another deck, but you still have to pay the full cost of that card unless you have Quinjet out. So in that sense, it seems pretty balanced. It's a 1 in 11 and you're drawing from somewhere else. So it's kind of like card generation and you still got to pay for it. But here's the thing. When it comes to deck building and like just, you know, managing the other decks that Spot's in, that's where this would get a little bit wild because you can essentially just create some scenarios where you're guaranteed to draw a card that you want, a card that's going to work with your strategy that you otherwise might not have drawn in your current deck. It's like having a deck list going into a game with 24 cards as possibilities and knowing what you're going to draw. I think that's kind of where the problem spawns with Spot, but I think it's close to being balanced, close to being something that you could see in Marvel Snap. Man, it's just so cool. It's such a thematically on point ability for this character. I love it so much. Oh, another couple quick notes is that Spot will not draw Thanos Infinity Stones or High Evo's Evolved cards because those two effects trigger at the start of the game. And if your side deck, right, your other Spot deck, hasn't actually activated, they won't have the stones, they won't have the evolved cards. That makes a lot of sense. And Spot will only draw from other decks as long as they contain full 12 cards. So you can't just like have a deck that has Spot plus one other card and guarantee that card. No cheating. You got to have a full deck, a viable deck to queue into. And I imagine if you didn't, then Spot would just go, nothing to pull and wouldn't give you a card, right? You wouldn't draw a card. So that's where it's a little bit touch and go. Your draw is so valuable in Marvel Snap, right? So if you can guarantee that you can get 3 draws off of this card, that's really good. You look at Adam Warlock, there's a little bit more work to be put in and you can only draw 1 at a time. With this card and combination like Kitty Pryde, you can draw a card every single turn, no problem, benefiting your strategy, and it would get a little bit out of hand. But very close, very cool. Maybe some, a few little tweaks and we'd have a more balanced card. But you know what? I don't even care, dude. Sometimes when we do these custom cards, it's about fun, not necessarily competitiveness and balance. We're just looking for some creative, cool ideas. And JackPack, you absolutely nailed it. I love this card. Fun fact, JackPack had the previous #1 custom card. It was the Stan Lee card that I talked about all the time. That was made by JackPack, and now you've just outdone yourself with Spot. So like the top 2 that I've ever seen doing all these custom card reviews are from Jack. So congratulations. amazing submission. Very cool card. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everyone who submitted and watches this channel, watches this series of custom card reviews. They're always so fun to see what you guys come up with. So anyways, I'm going to head out. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.